This summer, I was introduced to a pretty inspiring video called Lion Mode. I'll link it in the text. But during that video, we really were encouraged to be kind of like that ferocious spirit of a lion. And I was challenged a little bit more to think about, what does that actually look like? What does it mean to be in lion mode actually? And I want to spend a few minutes today just talking about what that might look like. As you think about what it means to be in lion mode, I want you to think about the three particular words that I'm going to pull out and describe a little bit more in detail as we move through this talk. The first one is this idea is, do you have the capacity for lion mode? And I think that's an important question to ask ourselves, and what might that look like? The second one is, do you have the level of intensity needed to be in lion mode? And the third one, are you willing to sacrifice? Because that's essential in order to have or be in this lion mode kind of leader. And so let's talk about each one of those three over the next slides. Right, the first thing I want to talk about is this idea of capacity. If you're going to be in lion mode, do you have the capacity to do that? Do you have the skills needed? Do you have the character that is required? Do you have even the abilities to be in that kind of lion mode that I'm talking about? John Maxwell wrote a book decades ago, and I read it early on in my career. And in one of the chapters talked about the leadership, the law of the lid. He was talking about that often we'll get into a position, or we'll have certain abilities, but we're all limited by our capacity to lead. And it doesn't mean that we can't grow our capacity, but we have to understand that all of us right now have certain capacities, and what does that look like for you? And you need to have the capacity to kind of get into that lion mode, both from a skill set, but also this idea of just yourself. And one question I have for each one of you is, do you have the capacity in your own energy and passion right now to be that kind of leader, to step up and be that courageous lion mode kind of leader? And so for me, what that means is ensuring that I have got a fuel gauge, that I know how full am I right now? Do I have the passion I need to serve in this way? And then if I realize that my capacity, my levelness of full might be lower, do I know what to do in order to fill my tank, in order for me to lead like I need to do in lion mode? And the last one I want to talk a little bit about is stretching yourself. This connects to the first time, this idea that we're all limited by our abilities and our skills and what we know, and yet we have the ability to be stretched. And that's sometimes not an easy process. That's a challenging process. But are you putting in the time? Are you putting the effort to stretch and grow so that you have the capacity to? Well, the next word around being in lion mode is this idea of intensity. And I love this story that I'm quoting here in Matthew about Jesus. And often we think of Jesus as a quiet, kind of humble leader. And yet, this particular story kind of gives us a different perspective on Jesus, where he has a certain level of intensity. And this is a story, if you're not aware, where he walks into the temple and realizes that there's selling going on and bartering and stealing. He's like, how dare you do this in my Father's house? And he begins to flip over tables and grab whips and drive people out of the Jewish sanctuary. And I think this is like the level of intensity that we sometimes need in our life. And it's important to know what you kind of want. And so what is your vision is really crucial when you think about intensity. What are the targets on the wall that you're shooting for? Because if you know what those are, you're able to determine what level of intensity that you might need. The second one is the ability to focus. Can I focus in? Can I prioritize the things in my life in order to hit certain targets that I put in my life? And I think for a lot of us, prioritization is going to be the key for us to be able to be in lion mode. because there's a lot of things that can distract us, right? We get pulled in this direction, we get pulled in that direction, we have to answer this question, we have to deal with this situation, and we're not able to prioritize always the most important things. But that's what great leaders do. They're able to prioritize the most important things so we can have that intensity focused on the target that's at hand. And the last one is drive, is that great leaders that I've seen have this driven nature that they're able to not only jump over hurdles, but sometimes go through hurdles that are needed in order to get success. It doesn't mean that we run over people, but it means that we really are focused on what's in front of us and we're able to get through the challenges of any given project. And our ability to do this well, I think, really makes us into having the ability to be a lion and have a lion mode going on. The last word related to being in lion mode is this idea of sacrifice. And I have this verse here that from Luke that I'd like us to just focus on a little bit. Because Jesus here really challenges us that if we're going to lead, if we're going to follow him, then we must be willing to give up things and sacrifice certain things. And being a leader, particularly a leader who's in lion mode, we will have to sacrifice. So one question I want to pose, and what I pose to a lot of leaders, is what are you willing to give up? Because you can't have everything. It's a myth to think that we can have everything in our life. Great family, a great career, being involved in our church, being involved in our neighborhoods, having lots of friends, being involved with our family. The demands of all those things is immense. And often we have to choose and really be beginning to sacrifice certain things in certain seasons. And so it's important to know, what am I willing to give up in order to accomplish certain goals? So one of my goals has been, how do I be an involved, engaged father? Well, what am I willing to give up in my career in order for that to happen? I have to be able to answer that question. Or vice versa, if I've got a certain project in my job that I'm really passionate about, what am I willing to give up in order to make that happen? And again, please do not believe the myth that you can have it all. That is a lie, because it's not true. And there are seasons in our life where we can have certain things, but often it's not all those pieces together. And so what are you working on right now? And if you have to identify that, what is the main thing? And then the second question is, then what are you willing to give up, if anything, in order for that to take place? And as a leader, it's important to navigate those conversations and have a good understanding of what that requires. As a leader, sometimes we need to be in lion mode. And as I described the past couple of minutes, there are really three key things that allow us to do that. Our capacity to be in lion mode matters. Do we have the space and the time and the abilities and the skills to lead in that way? Do we have the intensity where we can deliver in a moment, in a challenging moment, what it means to be a leader that's in lion mode? And third, are we willing to sacrifice certain things for us to be able to serve as leaders in lion mode? These are all questions that we have to ask. I love that one of the words used to describe Jesus is the Lion of Judah. So this idea of being in lion mode isn't this foreign concept that belongs somewhere else. Jesus describes himself and others as this lion. And that's what it sometimes takes to be a great leader. So hopefully you can develop the skills and the attributes to do that well. God bless.